Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Today's episode is being recorded during the holiday season, a time of joy, a time of reflection. My family loves this time of the year because we usually pause to do things that are fun, like watch Christmas movies, maybe listen to our favorite holiday songs. In fact, as I was heading home today, my wife was playing some good old Luther Vandross, which was
Mhm.
nice to hear. We also love decorating the Christmas tree. But the only thing we're missing as we've gotten a little older and our kids are like 24 and 26 is the excitement of our little ones, unwrapping gifts and making cookies, of course, for Santa Claus. So I do miss that a lot. But the part of the holidays I really love is that it brings out our generous spirit, a time when we stop focusing on ourselves but the needs of others. So now that the season of generosity has arrived, I thought this would be a great time to introduce you to a guest who will share with us one way we can all leave the world a better place than we found it. He'll do that by sharing a foundation he created and how you can support that foundation as well. Today's guest is Father Dennis Kasule. Father Dennis was born in Bunnamweri, Uganda. That's a rural community about an hour outside of the capital of Kampala. Father Dennis came to the U.S. in 2004 to become a priest. He was ordained in 2008 and just celebrated, believe it or not, his 15th priestly anniversary in 2023, which is really cool. In 2010, he founded the Stepping Stones Foundation of Hope. Its mission is to foster hope for the underserved communities in and around Bunnamweri, Uganda, through education, health, and faith, empowering them to help themselves. In other words, to thrive independently. To date, the foundation has connected more than 50 students to U.S. sponsors, dozens of former students who, through their education programs, are now self sufficient adults with thriving careers. The foundation has developed several clean water wells, help bring electricity to the village, build a health center that treats nearly 100 patients per month, and provides monthly community outreach. And the foundation just added dentistry services, which is nearly unheard of in Uganda. There's also a farm that teaches students, which is ideal for those who may not be interested or able to continue academics. The farm also helps financially support the school. So I'm really excited about having him here because us thinking about being generous this time of the year is so critical. So, Father, thank you so much for coming to this episode. This is the Christmas edition of the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Dr. Tony, thanks for having me.
Well, I am privileged to have you, and many people may be asking, well, how does Dr. Hampton know Father Dennis, right? And the way I know him is because I am actually a sponsor of two students who are part of this great foundation. I've actually sponsored two students over the last 2 years, and it's really nice not only to feel and be generous, but to see how they have progressed over the 3 years that we've sponsored them. So I really think that's awesome, and I just want to start off by saying that's how we know each other. And I also want to remind you guys who are checking us out on the podcast app. This is also being shared on YouTube. So if you want to see images of those wonderful kids that I sponsors and the rest of the crew, make sure to go to the YouTube channel either by searching my name, Dr. Tony Hampton, or just going to the link tree that we always share in the notes to the podcast. So again, Father, thanks again, and let's start our conversation. Most of my audience has probably never been to Africa, so tell us a little bit about the people of this wonderful town you're from.
So, first of all, Uganda and Africa. How do you get to Uganda? Uganda is the country from which the Nile River begins. So, to get to Uganda, follow the Nile River from the Mediterranean going south. And then where it begins is the beautiful little country known as Uganda. endearingly, it's known as the Pearl of Africa because of its beauty, rivers, lakes, natural animals, fauna, and all of those things that make up a beautiful environment you find in Uganda. The weather is always beautiful. It's a perpetual spring or summer. So it's the Pearl of Africa. And then Bunnamweri is about an hour away from the capital city of Uganda, which is Kampala. It's a rural community. The foundation not only takes care of that one community of Bunnamweri, but our projects are covering an area of 6 villages. And those 6 villages have a population of around 12,000 people. And so that's a little bit about Bunnamweri and Uganda.
Thanks for that. And as you were describing the geography, I was taking a little trip in my head, imagining going there. And truth be told, even though my heritage starts in Africa, my family and I have not been to Africa, so it's nice to know that I may have a tour guide now, and I can't wait to experience that. I think everybody should go to their homeland whenever possible, and I'm really looking forward to that. Um, and when I think about, being away from my home in US, I'm always thinking about the families and how they, thrive and support each other. So share a little bit about how a typical family from your town, how would they support themselves to survive?
So a typical family in Uganda would have, of course, parents and then about 6, 7 children. Oftentimes, the families are extended. You have the nuclear family, but also in the neighborhood, oftentimes you have aunts and uncles and grandparents. In the particular case of my family, we share a 10-acre land with my grandfather, my parents, and one of my siblings has a home also on that same property. So you have that sense of a communal living, a family that is extended, living together. We actually bury on that same property. Our late grandparents are buried on that same piece of land. So it's truly home, both here on earth and also in heaven. You lie there in that space. So there's a lot of interdependency in terms of community living. Most of us depend on agriculture for means of survival. We grow crops. Sometimes we rear animals. Sometimes families have parents that have jobs. For instance, my parents were both elementary school teachers and other professions of that nature. Nevertheless, the main source of survival in terms of finance is agriculture.
Okay, and not surprising at all. And in fact, on my podcast, we talk a lot about nutrition, and one of the best ways to be healthy is to eat from the land that you are surrounded by. So it's nice to know that not only are they able to feed themselves, but they're able to support themselves with the same approach. And I could only imagine what it's like growing up. My wife is from Mississippi in the South, and she's had not exactly the same experience, but absolutely familiar with the idea of, you know, eating off the land. Certainly my mom would say the same thing. So it's really nice to hear that. So I think about the kids and what life is like for the children, particularly when your foundation is focused on the kids. So before we get to the foundation, what would you like to say about anything about the children and their experiences there?
The children growing up, life is of course joyful for a child, but it's very difficult as well. Think about the day of a child in Bunnamweri. Growing up myself, my home and my school were 4 miles apart, and each day we would have to walk those 4 miles, go to school, walk those 4 miles, come back. In the evening, we would have to, because there was no electricity, you have to get your homework done, but you have to make sure that you do it before the natural light goes out. Um, but then in between you have all other kinds of activities, going to the well to get water. By then our wells were a mile away to get water, go to the forest to get firewood to be able to prepare a meal. So life is, compared to other places, involves a lot of activity on a daily basis. That keeps us healthy and strong in its ways. You're always doing something, exercising,
Right.
walking. So there's a benefit to that, but it's also quite um, uh, difficult. It's a lot of inconveniences compared to life elsewhere. So in that sense, the foundation was actually founded on how do we make life a little easier for these little people, and making somebody out of a nobody. Oftentimes,
Mhm.
they go through life as nobodies, but the foundation engages its activities, helping a young person to grow fully, holistically. So we care for the spiritual aspect of a person through faith activities. We try to cater for the mind through education programs, the body through not only sports, provision of clean water, ensure people can have access to water, access to health, yes, best health through clinic activities and dentistry projects. And then, of course, we take care of development of the community as a whole, because we see that a person doesn't grow in isolation, they grow as a community. So
Mhm.
our projects aim at empowering persons, but within the context of their communities, so that there is development not just for one, but for all.
Yeah, it's just hearing you talk about community. I I really understand like how important it is to develop a young child like a flower. You put the right fertilizer around them and the right sunlight, and obviously, who you hang with. I used to tell my kids, if you can't grow together, you can't chill together. So that would help them hang with the right kind of kids. And just imagining as a wellness doctor having to walk 4 miles, that's definitely inconvenient, but it would definitely keep you healthy. Having to go to the well to get water a mile away. And then, of course, having to go to the forest. We have so many conveniences that we take for granted, and I do appreciate all of them. But imagining that in 2023, there are still people on the planet who actually don't have these conveniences. And it blows my mind every time I think about it. Before I ask you a few more questions about stepping stones, I want to ask you a little bit about your your mom, who's the foundation for you, because for you to even do the spiritual work you do, but to then take it to the next level, very few people are inspired to not just do their day job, although yours is very very important, but then you decided to create this foundation. Was that inspired? Did your parents play a role? What role did your mom play in your life?
My mom has played a key role. She continues to play a key role in my life. So looking around the village, from something stood out for me. For those of us who had mothers that had received education and had some kind of profession, whatever it was, there was a difference to our families.
Hmm.
And that difference was, if a mom had been educated, she would ensure that all of her children receive education. Much more so than, for instance, a father would do. Moms push their children to rise, to ensure that they go forward. Fathers do the same.
Hmm.
There's a unique way, especially in the African context, in which the mother is the educator of the family. And so when moms are educated, you know that those families are going to be educated.
Right.
We see it actually in our own foundation. The kids that we have educated and have become professionals, the torch continues to shine in their families. Some of them have actually brought their children to our school to educate them as well. So there's a comparative advantage to educating a mother. An educated mother becomes an educated family.
Moms are, no matter where you travel in the world, moms are so critical. Shout out to the dads who check us out too. We think we add value as well, but I do think there's
Mm.
something about a mom, the nurturing that they bring, and then if you can add to that this knowledge piece that you give to our children is so critical. So I'm happy to know that she played that role. Now, I know that when it comes to the foundation, there tends to be a slightly heavier focus on the girls, right? Speaking of future moms, right? So why was it important that we didn't forget about the girls and give them some extra attention when you started this foundation?
So maybe a couple of reasons. The first is oftentimes in our rural context in Africa and Uganda in particular, the tendency is to educate the man. So supposing you have this limited resources, who would they go to first in regard to education? It would be the boys. And the thinking was that, well, we educate the boys that they may take care of the girls.
Hmm.
You have the husband as the breadwinner. And so the tendency was that we prepare the men to become breadwinners for their families. And so a lot of girls would tend to miss out on educational opportunities. They would go through elementary school, but after that, they would not go forward to
Hmm.
secondary school and university. But as I've mentioned before, based on actual research I did in my college studies, I discovered that the opposite is actually critical to holistic development of communities. That when you educate a woman, the social impact is comparatively higher than
Mm.
social impact of educating boys. So the communities continue to focus on boys, and then for us as a foundation, we want to focus on those that are sort of on the margins in terms of opportunities, and they tend to be girls. And
Awesome. That makes sense. So, and I like that word, social impact in our at Advocate Health, where we actually have vice president for social impact, vice president for community, vice president for health equity. And so our health system is starting to understand the importance of this language and impact that it can have by removing barriers. And you guys have done a great job removing barriers and doing some great work over the last 14 or so years. So let's think about Stepping Stones, Foundation of Hope, and some of the achievements you guys have achieved since starting the organization. What comes to mind when you think about achievements?
first of all, our greatest achievement, collaboration. So Stepping Stones operates as a collaborative space for US-based people like you, Dr. Tony, and all our board members, our sponsors, as well as people in Uganda. So the foundation is this kind of space in which we can collaborate on these two different continents to lift up people's lives and to lift up lives of communities. So that's probably the first and most important piece. The rest of the projects, the units that out of which we operate, are only functional because the space is there in which we can collaborate and then support individuals and communities. So our greatest achievement is to be able to create that space of collaboration. And then the collaboration bears fruits. The school we've built, the health clinic and dentistry were able to bring electricity to actually this whole area because we realized that that was critical to any kind of income generating activities and critical to the lives of individuals. We engage in encouraging sports activities, especially for young people, young girls and boys, because that is also key um, to creating a community among them, and then,
Mhm.
in a sense, creating a sense of focus, goals, visions that can then expand outwards to other activities, be it in education achievement, be it in taking care of others. Um, Another aspect, of course, as a priest, is faith, making sure that people have this foundation of faith that enables them to have hope and to look not only out for themselves, but also to look out for the good of others. I think faith helps us in that way too, to open up ourselves for the good of others and to grow together to lift up one another.
Yeah, it's a great unifier, a great way to inspire, a great way to create values, and just to imagine you guys have done so much with this vision that you've had, grounded in your faith, um, imagining having water wells and electricity and a school to make or should I say, a school to create knowledge for our future generation, but also a place where you can even give birth to the next generation, and to imagine that a lot of these things didn't exist, and now they do. It is such an inspiration, and I really um, am, just blown away by that. That it just, you have a vision, and then you make it happen. And one of the things that I'm curious about, and I think my audience would be curious about, when it comes to the school, since that's a big part of how your mom inspired you, that education piece, and particularly for our young girls. Talk a little bit about what ages are the kids and grades and things of that nature. I'm really curious about that.
Our school is a combination of what in the US we call kindergarten and elementary up to
Mhm.
about grade 7. So we have ages from about 4 to about 13. All of those you can imagine, and we have in our school close to 400 of them spread in all those grade levels.
That's a big number.
It is
Oh my
about 50
goodness.
of them have sponsors who are US based. Sponsorship is $45 per month, which caters for their tuition and also the meals they have at school, as well as part of their boarding fees, especially for those that have to stay at school because of maybe the home environment is not conducive for their well-being, or the parents have chosen that they want to raise them in our environment. And so we're trying to provide holistic education for these close to 400 kids in an environment that is safe for them, in which they feel supported, in which each of them feels valued for whatever gifts or talents that God has given to them.
It's a little shocking for a lot of people, I think, to hear you say $45 a month. And I think about, I don't really drink coffee regularly like I once did, but I can imagine going to Starbucks and spending $4 or $5 for a cup of coffee, right? Because it's fancy, But to imagine that the cost of school, maybe lunch and supplies, to be provided at that cost point is amazing. It's just such a different world in my brain. So thanks for kind of putting that out there. And I guess for those who hear your voice, hear this story, see the images today, like, what's the best way for them to get involved and make an impact?
The best way to get involved is to lift up a child that is in need of education by becoming a sponsor, like you, Dr. Tony,
Yeah.
$5 a month, and making a whole difference for a child who does not have a future now has a future that is better and brighter and filled with hope because of the sponsorship. So that's our most common way of getting involved, sponsoring kids. But also, we do have fundraisers annually. We have a fundraiser coming up early next year, February 10th. And the goal of this fundraiser is going to be to improve our computer lab. We want to bring up our kids as global citizens, and
Hmm.
that means they have to know how to connect with the rest of the world and to be productive in that kind of environment. And we think that is going to be indispensable for the future for anyone in the world. So currently we have 12 computers for 400 kids.
Oh my goodness.
And we want to be able to increase the number of computers as well as improve connection to the internet so that our kids can have access to sources of knowledge and sources of connecting with the world beyond their local environment.
If I can do a shout out for technology, I will do it now because obviously we're using technology as we connect. I think the first time we ever connected in a meeting, it was through technology. We take it for granted, but even as a low carb keto carnivore doc, I learned those principles not from medical school. I learned it through the computer. I learned it listening to people and learning through YouTube and those types of podcasts and things of that nature. So the power of seeing the world through a different lens, learning things that are spiritual that you need to learn, learning how to be successful in whatever career the students are interested in. The technology is vital. So for those who are inspired to sponsor, that's one way to do it. But like you said, having a resource is 12 computers. We probably in my house have 5 or 6 computers in this house. Seriously, it's just something to think about when you start putting that in perspective. I don't even think about things like that. So I really appreciate you giving us the numbers because I think that provides perspective. Now, and then you mentioned the fundraiser that's in February. I think it's Chandler's Chop House in Schaumburg, Illinois. So those who are local to the Chicago area, Chandler's Chop House in Schaumburg, Illinois. And we'll make sure to have a way to connect to that if you're local and you want to meet some of the great folk doing this work in person, which is always nice. One other thing I'm curious about is, when kids, what happens to a kid? They kind of graduate, they go to high school. Do you guys what happens? Do you keep connected to them? Is there other things that happen where the foundation isn't involved once they leave that elementary level?
In the past, we've strived to carry all our kids forward because those that graduate from our elementary school, we strive to see that they go forward in other schools, in high schools. In our previous program, which is our heritage program, we actually sponsored kids all the way from elementary school up to the time they finish college and make sure they get a job. All our heritage students that I mentioned earlier, close to 60 of them, they actually have jobs. So our end goal is to ensure that a person goes through our program all the way to the end and they're able to live independently, to thrive, and to contribute to the community around us. To give some examples, a lot of people that work in our health clinic are graduates of our own programs. Some of our teachers at school have graduated from our programs. Some of the people that do our foundation work as an entity are also graduates from our programs. People who do accounting, people who do photography and communication, media work, they have all graduated through our programs, as well as some of the managers of the various operating units. So our goal is to, as the foundation mission states, is to foster hope for underserved communities. But the last piece is very important, that they may help themselves. That they are able to be independent and help themselves, and also help others that are connected to them.
Excellent. So as we are kind of wrapping up this holiday episode of the podcast, and I really appreciate you for bringing a unique, twist to the platform as we celebrate the holidays and we celebrate being grateful and having a sense of gratitude. I always ask my guests one question, and that's how they plan to protect their nest. So when you think about that nest and rope acronym I created, and I'm going to review that just to make sure that's clear to you. It's about, are you gonna focus on nutrition, exercise, less stress or more sleep, recovering from trauma, and or the other T in the nest is for our thoughts. And I think how we think is part of what we did today, how we think about others in other places, how we support others, and how we think about being grateful and charitable. And then we have a rope to climb up to the nest. And that R is for relationships. We now have a relationship. The people who have, exposed me to this great organization, we have relationships. And obviously those two children, those two students that I help sponsor, I have a relationship with them. So are we going to work on our relationships? The O and the P is for avoiding organisms and pollutants that harm us. That could be environmental, your food. It can be other things. And then the E in the rope is about life experiences that matter. Are you going to focus on your experiences? Today was a great experience for me and my listeners because they have an experience they wasn't expecting to get today, but hopefully an experience that meant something to them. And the other part of the E is to protect our emotions. And hearing the story of Uganda, hearing your story, it sparks emotions for me. And again, the word that I'm going to go back to is just being grateful that we have people on the planet who care enough about others that they're willing to give a part of them, not just their the thought of helping others, but their time, their energy, their resources, and even just taking the time to share this message today. So when you think about that nest and rope, is there any part of that that you want to focus on over the next 12 months to make your life better?
My life, I think what I want to focus on is seeing little everyday miracles in my life, and I think that ties in well with relationships, ties in well with being grateful because sometimes we are so focused on what is not there,
Mm.
and then we lose sight of what is there. But oftentimes there's a miracle in what is there. For us as a foundation, for instance, the things we've been able to do with very little resources, all of them are miracles in and of themselves. So there is a way in which God has provided for so many through us efforts that we put in. God takes them and then just multiplies them so immensely. So I'm going to be looking out for little miracles every day and hanging on to those as my way of connecting with God and connecting with those that are around me, recognizing the miracle that is in each and every individual, and then enhancing relationships.
Well, thank you. That's a very inspiring area to focus on, and I look forward to watching some of those miracles, evolve and become the miracles that they are. So thank you so much, Father, for joining me. I'm so happy we decided to do this, and again, just hoping to inspire during the holidays, this ideal of being grateful and having a giving spirit. So thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Chen, and thank you for sponsoring those two little miracles.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And guys, we took a trip to Uganda today to Father's birth town and a place that he's really giving back to. And I really am inspired by that, and I'm thankful that he had a vision, a big vision to make a difference in the lives of others. And my hope is that this episode will inspire you to do the same. For those who joined us for this episode, if you're inspired, if this story of helping the students achieve their goal inspires you, check out the links in the podcast or video notes where you'll have an opportunity to either be a sponsor or just make a contribution to the cause. I do believe that every little contribution matters, and no matter how big or small, Just do what's in your heart. Um, I I just want to, thank you for even supporting this channel and just being open to allow me to express different topics that allow us to dive a little deeper and to become better human beings and ultimately, and I think I mentioned this earlier, can we leave this world better than we found it, right? And I just think that in order to do that, each and every individual must play a small part. And if you do your little part to make the world a better place, whether it's in your own community or across the sea, the world's going to be a better place. And you may impact people that you've never met, but by doing this type of work and supporting a foundation that's already doing the work, I think that'll align with many of our values and goals. So again, I thank you for coming to this episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast. And until the next episode, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest.